Welcome back. It's lesson 24 where we are going to finish the book. We are at the end of chapter 22. We are almost done with the questions for that chapter. We'll take a quick little peek at them. Yesterday we did cover question 1. That was right in the first page or 2 of the chapter of ways that she was both accepted and not accepted into mainstream society, and then also you can use information from previously. We did cover question 2, what was the purpose of revisiting the campsite? So she's finally, after 30 years, ready to kind of confront these fears that she's had and that she's trying to make some peace with what was there. Question 3, the most of the campsite's gone. The place looks devastated by a bombing raid, and the illusion that she's making here is that allusion to Hiroshima. So the Americans dropped the bomb on Hiroshima, ending the war and devastating part of that country, and yet here in our own country, we also hurt the Japanese Americans that were here. We didn't drop an actual bomb on them, but putting them into the camps, which really were like concentration camps in the fact that they were put into prisons. There was no just reason. They did not commit crimes. They were just being housed there, kind of dropping a bomb on these poor people. All right, so we are going to continue. We have one question left to go here, and we are on page 196. So if you would open up, where there's a break right on that page, and that's where we're going to pick up today. A gust of wind rushed through the orchard, bringing ice off the white slopes and more blossom scent. It hurt to inhale deeply. I pulled my coat tight, ready to head for the car's warmth, but also wanting to hold this moment a little longer. I might never be back here again. I was poking around brush clumps and foundation chunks looking for something else. One more sign, anything. I found another collection of stones off by themselves, but so arranged that they could not have been accidental. Nearby, an edge showed through the sand. I uncovered a single stepping stone, slightly worn, that led nowhere, yet lay as a subtle appendage to the small rock garden. One of these had lain outside our barracks door, a first step below 3 wooden ones. It could be ours, perhaps not. Many barracks had such entrances, but this one would serve. I could call it the rock garden Papa put there. Almost the sign I wanted. Not quite enough. There was more to all this than the lovely patience of these gathered stones. They were part of it, but there was something else in the air, a sound, a smell, just a whiff hanging on that gust from the orchard or blown down the ghostly alleyway of what used to be the street we lived on. I was hearing Mama's voice once more, but differently, louder now, right in front of me, and I smelled cork burning. That was one of Papa's remedies when her back knotted up. He would take little coins of cork and place them on the tension nodes and light them. And the cork would burn dark rings into her skin as she hunched on the porch steps, groaning with relief. They were sitting on the steps like that. Mama hunched, Papa tending the blackening rings. One morning, a few days before we left camp, now that smell and those voices and the wind from the orchard brought with them the sign I was waiting for, the image of a rekindled wildness in Papa's eyes. 27 years earlier, I had carried it with me out of camp, only half understanding what it meant. Remembering now, I realized I had never forgotten his final outburst of defiance. But for the first time, I saw it clearly as the gathered desert stones. And when I left today for good, I would carry that image with me again as the rest of my inheritance. It was the day Papa suddenly came back to life and decided to go into Lone Pine and buy a car. Mama had been packing, and that brought the uncertainty of our future to such a sharp point. Her back went into spasms. She didn't want to talk. She wanted to concentrate on the rings of heat. She let Papa rant a long time before she reacted. "That's crazy, Co," she said. "Don't call me crazy. You think I'm going to ride that stinking bus all the way to Los Angeles? It's cheaper than buying a car." "Cheaper? What is it worth? To be packed in there like cattle. You call that cheap?" We don't have money to buy a car. I know how much money we have. He jumped to his feet then, rushed into the house, came out with his hat on and a shirt, half buttoned, and his walking stick and his turtleneck sweater tied around his neck, and took off striding toward the main gate, leaving Mama with her back full of smoking cork, which had done no good at all, since this new move of his merely bunched her muscles up worse than ever. It was late afternoon when we heard the horn, still blocks away. Without looking out the door, Mama said, "Here he comes." As the honks came closer, we heard another sound, like a boxer working out a flabby punching bag. Mama moved to the doorway. We all did. Chizzo, May, me, in time to see a blue Nash 4-door coming around the corner, with its 2 front tires flat and Papa sitting up straight and proud behind the wheel, his hat cocked, his free hand punching at the horn. Heads were appearing at doorways all up and down the street. He stopped in front, racing the engine and grinning while he eyed Mama and fingered the shiny knobbed dashboard gear shift. On the seat between his legs, he held a half-empty quart bottle of whiskey. He yelled, "What do you think, little mama?" She didn't answer. He had not been drinking much at all for about 6 months. She stood there waiting to see what he was going to do. He laughed and made the engine roar and demanded to know where all his boys were. He wanted to show those yogores what a real car looked like. Keo was the only son still in camp, and he had gone off to help someone else load furniture. So Papa announced that he would give all his women a ride. Mama protested, said he ought to get those tires fixed if we expected to take this car all the way into Los Angeles. Papa roared back at her, louder than the engine, and with such a terrible samurai scowl that we all went leaping and piling into the car. Mama laughed, slamming the back door and climbing into the front seat next to him. "You think it's a pretty good car?" he said, pleased by this show of power. Mama said nothing. She sat very stiff, cool, enduring him. Chizzo was the placater now, leaning forward from the back to pat him on the shoulder. "It's a fine car, Papa." "You watch." He grabbed the gear lever and rammed it into low. The Nash leaped, and we were cloppeting down the street on those 2 flats and 2 good tires, with Papa laughing, sipping from the bottle. At the first corner, he said, "You think I can't pick out cars?" Softly, Chizzo said, "You did real good, Papa." He stepped on the gas, hitting maybe 30, swerving crazily. In the back seat, we were all thrown around, flung from door to door like rag dolls, with Mama bouncing in front of us and Papa's hat crunching up against the ceiling. May cried out, "Not so fast, Papa. You're going to wreck the car." "Think the car can't take it?" he yelled back at her. "You watch this." His gaiety turned ferocious again. He stomped the pedal, pushing the speedometer up to 35. His right front tire had shredded, and it flopped like a mangled arm. It lashed out, upending the garbage can. I started to cry. Chizzo, her calm shattered, was yelling at him to slow down. Mama was too, and May was screaming. He wouldn't listen and told us to hold on while he swung into the street, careening past emptying barracks where suitcases and duffel bags sat stacked. As we passed people standing by the baggage, Papa swerved from one side to the other, waving. He laughed, growled, made faces. In front of us, a laden family was hiking out toward the main gate. Papa swung wide, honking and waving. "Hey, hey," he shouted. They turned, too amazed to wave back. "Don't miss that bus," he yelled. At the next corner, he spun off into a deserted section of barracks. These already looked like the ones we'd first moved into. Sand piling up against foundation blocks, the clotheslines empty, all signs and markers gone. It made no difference to Papa that no one was out there to witness his performance. He aimed for tumbleweeds lying in the roadbed and shouted with triumph each time he squashed one. Chizzo and Mama and May had quit trying to control him. I'd stopped crying. We grabbed for handholds, covered our heads, hoping simply to survive until he hit something hard or ran out of gas. We came to a fire break and Papa plunged into it, began to cut a twisty path across its emptiness, shouting, "Hi-ya! Hi-ya!" gouging ragged tracks through the dusty sand. The way this fire break lay, there seemed to be nothing in front of us now but sagebrush and open country. Rising in the distance, south of camp to the range of round, buff-colored hills rumored to be full of rattlesnakes. The few times I wished I could walk in one direction for as long as I wanted, the threat of those rattlesnakes deterred me. And now, farther south, beyond that visible barrier, out in the world I scarcely remembered, there loomed the dark, threatening cloud I'd heard grown-ups talk about. The way we seemed to be heading, I should have been frightened into a coma. But for this once, I was not. Watching Papa bounce and weave and shout in front of me, I was almost ready to laugh with him. With the first bubbly sense of liberation, freedom, his defiant craziness had brought along with it. I believed in him completely just then, believed in the fierceness flashing in his wild eyes. Somehow that would get us past whatever waited inside the fearful dark cloud, get us past the heat and the rattlers and a great deal more. At the fence he had to turn, sending up a white billow of dust. Where the fence met the highway, we cornered again, heading for the bus stop. A crowd waited there, standing idly, sitting around on scattered baggage. They all turned to watch when they heard us coming. Papa tooted the horn and yelled out, "No bus for us! No bus for us!" The young kids were mystified by this and stood open-eyed watching. Some of the older folks smiled, waving as we hit the chuck hole and bounced. Papa swung left, and we clattered out onto the wide, empty boulevard that ran the length of the camp, back to where our own baggage waited and the final packing. And that is the end of the book. It also answers that question there for us, so that last question that we see about Papa, that earlier it seemed like a foolish decision, and we saw the argument between Mama and Papa, but now that we get that little bit of an experience of her riding in the car, although they started out being quite scared, the fact that he is so happy, he has a little bit of his manhood by going out and buying that car and taking that independence and not having to rely on the government to provide him a ride. She starts to see that carried with her, that she actually has a little bit of respect for Papa, that she recognized that he was taking that step of manhood back, that Manzanar had taken some of that manhood. We talked about that in a previous chapter, but by buying that car, that was his step of being able to say, I am my own man. We're going to get through this together as a family, and that she's able to look back at that now and see that it wasn't so bad. I do also want to share with you, so last night on TV, we were watching PBS, and they currently are running and I'm sure by the time you watch this video, they won't be running it anymore, but it was about Asian Americans. And last night it was called The Question of Loyalty. And it was so tied into everything that we've read in our book that if I'm able to tag that, I'll share that link on Schoology. It's not required, it's extra if you're interested. I think I found about a 6-minute video that I could share, but what I watched last night on TV was an hour long, depending on what PBS is sharing that you don't have to sign up for. But that question of loyalty, we think about what happened with having to sign the yes, yes, no, no petition, and that was included within that part. It deals with 2 other different Japanese families, but their stories were very similar, although one of them was treated very much as traitors, and they were put in Fort Lincoln just like Papa was, but never left. there's just really neat stories to share within there, and the idea too of the fact that the EC could not become American citizens and how that affected the NEC because they were American citizens, etc. So I encourage you to watch that video if I'm able to share that there, or even if you can Google it and look up. I think it's called The Question of Loyalty. So this is probably the last video that I'm going to make for you unless I decide or figure out how to make a goodbye video. I've been trying to think it through, and this has just been a really challenging time. So a quick little message to all of you. I really love you. I really miss you. I know that through most of your schooling, you guys didn't always hear that. You were often called the bad class at times, and I really did grow to love you. I'm gonna have to end the video. I miss you. I hope you have a great summer.